Welcome, world, to Life, Love, and Wellness Global, a worldwide wellness movement. I am Reverend Sandy Rogers, and as the creator of this historic event, it is my pleasure to welcome you. We come together to bring you this historic event. We have practitioners, holistic practitioners. We have medical doctors. We have spiritual individuals. This event is so lovingly dedicated to my mother, Mrs. Barbara Dean Brown. And my mother taught me like 40 plus years ago about the importance and the meaning behind herbs. And she would always say, we don't know what they putting in those pills, so you better not, get hooked on prescription drugs. And so we listened to Mom, but not all of us paid attention. My sister, bless her heart, was diagnosed recently thereafter with asthma, and she was prescribed prednisone, which is a very powerful steroid. And my sister actually got hooked on steroids, like someone out on the street kind of hooked, like on heroin or crack or something like that. And so my mom and my sister are both on the other side, living in the other dimension, but they're upholding me, and this is dedicated to their memory. So we don't want to come and make you change your mind about what you're doing. We just want to provide information to you, something different, so that you have options to choose from, so that you're not stuck. Because the environment that we now live in, the fast foods, the toxins in the air that we breathe and in the water that we drink, and the processed foods, and all of that is causing havoc on this precious body temple. So God created our bodies to heal themselves, but they can only heal themselves when they're fed and they're nourished and they're stress-free. And so the 60 or so or more experts that we have are bringing you this worldwide wellness movement in an attempt to share their testimonies and their information with you. So we have from age 14 on up. I don't even know what the oldest age is. I think 88 or something. So you see, that's a wide range of knowledge that we're bringing you. And so we hope that you come and that you get all the knowledge that you need to affect a positive change on your life, and share this with others. It's free, it's online, and so we're just so thankful that you decided to be a part of our listening community, the viewing community, and we certainly appreciate you for giving us your time of day and your energy and your efforts to being with us and to being a part of this historic event. We have pulled together people of color for you, by you, right? So we want to make sure that you understand that we too, melanated people with color, can enjoy, practice, and participate in some of these modalities that others have been doing for centuries, and that is pretty new to our community. So we talk about Qigong, we talk about meditation, yoga, spiritual work from a different perspective than religion. So we talk about the spirituality aspect. We talk about abuse in the families. We talk about all kinds of subjects because we know that in our communities there are layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff that we never talk about that's causing a negative effect on our bodies and its healing process. So we address it, whatever it is, and we hope that you will benefit from the many experts that we have, and that you walk away with lots of knowledge and lots of new information, and that you become fully empowered to share information with others. So thank you for being with us. We love you and we bless you, and we look forward to doing this again. But thanks for being here with the first one. We appreciate you.
Love and wellness. Life, love and wellness.
Hi everyone, I'm Marlo Oliver. I live in Marietta, Georgia, and I am a practicing massage therapist, Reiki practitioner, meditation facilitator, and my objective is to support people in their emotional, physical, and spiritual well being. So, in a nutshell, that's who I am.
So, with your objective of assisting others in their well being, you've come today to tell a story that supports your own well being. And so, without further ado, would you please share this timely message with the audience?
Sure. So, I'm here today to share about how I was misled as a child about who my parents were. And how that came about is that my mother, when she became pregnant with me, she was not married. That was in the late 60s. From what I understand, it was not a popular thing to have done back then. And for some reason that I'm actually still attempting to understand, my mother's parents decided that they would become my guardian and tell the world that I was their child. So I was born believing that, or at least I was raised believing that my grandparents were my parents, my mother was my sister, my aunts were my sisters, and that my uncle was my brother. And, as a child, that was fine because that was just my reality. That's what I knew. But at some point, around the age of 6 or so, I was informed that that was not the case. And it was rather unceremonious. It's not like anybody sat down and, said, well, this is actually the situation and this is why we did it. What happened was my sister mother was about to get married to my brother-in-law stepdaddy. So things were going to change. And the intention was evidently for me to leave my grandparents' house because they raised me. So to leave my grandparents' house and to go live with my mother and my stepfather. So in order for that to happen, I guess somebody decided it was time to tell me the truth. And it's only been recently that I've discovered that me leaving my grandparents' home and going to live with my mother and stepfather pretty much completed the story for them. Like, the child had been returned to its mother and all is well with the world. And that's how my family has treated the story. But what was omitted and what still has yet to be acknowledged is the effect that lie, because that's essentially what it is, the effect that lie had on me. So I think it's time to shed light on that story and just acknowledge similar stories that other people have gone through and to heal it, because as the book title says, feelings buried alive never die. And when I'm working on clients, when they're coming thinking they're in physical pain, what they're actually in is unacknowledged emotional pain. And I have let's just say I can relate to what they're going through.
So, is your telling the story like a first step in for you as far as the healing of this lifelong emotion that you've carried? I'm not gonna name it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a first step. It's it's an additional step, because once I realized that, I was actually experiencing physical pain and emotional pain and mental pain, attempting to, conform to this lie, I realized years ago that I needed to do something about it. So, whether that was the 2.5 years I spent in an outpatient psychotherapy program, or whether it's been the personal development programs I've been doing, some of which occurred over at Landmark Education, or whether it's been some of the holistic training I've done, wherein, some of the training requires you to actually do the work. So you're in the hot seat and you're sharing things about yourself you haven't shared before. You're moving energy that's been stagnant. I think all of it has been part of my healing, but me sharing this with all of you, it's just healing on another level. It's it goes beyond me and my pain and how I've moved through it and how I'm in the process of overcoming it, to sharing it with other people, which I think is just a step that's more advanced than me just focusing on myself trying to overcome the pain.
Because it is common, more common than in families, I think, than what we've even acknowledged in the past.
Yeah.
Like a few months ago, the young lady who's was told of the woman that raised her was not her mother, but had actually kidnapped her
Right.
from out of the hospital, and her response to that.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that briefly, and what I found most amazing about that is, the child had developed maternal feelings toward this woman who raised her, even though that woman was not her biological mother. And so when it was found out that the child had actually been abducted and the young lady was introduced to her biological family, the young lady was obviously torn, because even though she had been abducted, her allegiance, her alliance, her emotion, was for the woman who raised her. And evidently the woman did a decent job at raising the young lady, even though it wasn't her birth mother. So this young lady is now torn because she's got feeling for this woman who's now been arrested for the abduction, and then she's got this relationship with the family she did not have an opportunity to grow up around. So it's kind of hard to remain neutral when your biological family feels some type of way about the woman who abducted you, but you actually love that woman because she's the woman who raised you. But you don't want to. She doesn't want to feel like she's not loyal to the people, the family she was born into. So I'll just say that too is complicated. It's complicated.
Would you say that's similar to some of the things that you were feeling as a younger child? Like your grandmother was your mother.
Right.
And now, like, no, she's not your mother.
Right. Yeah, it was, I'd say very similar. I wasn't illegally abducted, but I think, socially and emotionally and mentally, I was. Because, women have been having children since the beginning of time. So how the act of giving birth can be turned into this, I don't even know what to call it. It's just drama. It's just drama. So, yes, to answer your question, I did believe, and in a lot of ways still do feel, that my grandmother was my mother. Because she was the one who bathed me and fed me and clothed me and helped me with my homework, and it was her household, her and my grandfather's household that I was raised in, with my sister, aunts, and uncle, brother. My mother was on her own. She, from what I understand, she was in the house when I was little, but at some point she moved out on her own. So she was kind of like that sister that I rarely saw. So my nuclear family, was, I'll use the actual terms, my grandparents, my aunts, and my uncle. So, those were the folks that I was around. And having been told that they were not actually, who they said they were, left me feeling really lost. Lost, betrayed, confused, and even though I'm older now, obviously, and I know the truth, when my grandmother died, for all I know, the way I felt, my mother had passed. When my grandfather died, my father died. And it's not the story that they concocted that disturbs me today. Because, I kind of get it. My mother was, like I said, she wasn't married, that wasn't socially acceptable, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if my grandparents made up the story because of the fact that it was a sin to have a child out of wedlock, or if they held some sort of social status and they did not want to be looked down upon because one of their children who was unwed had a child. I don't really know what the reason is, and given that my grandparents are no longer living, I don't know that I'll ever get the truth. But what gets me to this day is I'm expected to have maternal feelings toward my mother. And I am constantly reminded by that side of the family that I should have these feelings. And I'm like, what don't you people get? So, recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with my uncle. My uncle had called and told me that my mother was in town. They're all in Philadelphia, so she had flown from where she is to Philadelphia to visit her siblings. And then my uncle texted me a picture of himself, my mom, and my aunt. And, I got the picture, I looked at it, and I'm like, okay. And I kept moving, went on about my day. And that was on like a Tuesday. And so on Friday, my uncle called me. And he's like, hey, did you get the picture I sent? And I'm like, yeah. And the phone was quiet for a bit. And then he said, well, she's your mother. She did give birth to you. And I'm looking at my phone like, really? So, because I did not have a response or a reaction to him sending me the photo, the next thing out of his mouth is that. And so, I just had to tell him. I'm like, your mother was my mother, and your father was my father. So when they passed away, I was as hurt and as inconsolable as you all were. So if you all were going to tell me that she was my mother, you should have done it then. Trying to force it down my throat and have me behave the way you need me to behave in order for you all to feel better about the lie you all conspired, you all agreed to participate in. I'm not going to do it. So, that's not to say that I don't care about my mother. That's not to say that I don't respect my mother. It's just that I don't have the feelings for her that I had for my grandmother. And I'm not going to allow anybody to force me to feel a way that I don't feel. And so because I don't feel that way, I am, have pretty much been ostracized from the family, which is an unfortunate circumstance because I do love them and care about them. But not enough to sacrifice how I feel to make them comfortable. So I share that because I know that there are other people who've been born under or raised under similar circumstances. And if there are any parents out there who are watching this who are considering misleading your children about who their parents are, please don't do it. Just don't do it, because it creates so much unnecessary anxiety and confusion and a lack of trust, and it's just life is hard enough than to have to go through life wondering who you are and who you're going to be and whose you are, and it's just a lot.
You brought up the lack of trust, and that's what I was thinking of when I was listening to the story, because the parents are the first examples that a child look up to for truth.
Right.
And when that doesn't exist, or when it becomes a lie, how did that impact you for the rest of your life and the relationships that you have with other people?
As you can imagine, I have trust issues. Very leery of people. I'm very what comes to mind is guarded. Very guarded about who I'm around, who's around me. And actually that's really just been within the past, I'd say, 3 years or so. Like, I'm aware of the fact that I have trust issues now, but before I was really aware that I had trust issues. The people I was attracting was pretty much like the people I was brought up around. So I would attract situations where I wasn't of primary concern in that relationship, or my health and well-being wasn't important, or my feelings weren't important, or whatever they had going on was more important than what I had going on. And I really can't blame them, because that's what I was accustomed to, and those are the relationships that I put myself in. I also found that what I wound up doing was attempting to overcompensate, or take on near impossible tasks, because I had to prove my worth. I had to validate my existence. In order to do that, I had to do something great, and that's exhausting. And the last time I did that, it wasn't good. It wasn't good for me at all. So I've learned from that. But back to the original question, I'm very guarded, very particular about who I'm around. My core group of people they know who they are. You all know who you are. And, those are the folks who, they know my weaknesses, but they never hold that against me, or attempt to manipulate me, because they know what my weaknesses are. My core people, they build me up. So some positive things have come out of this story that was concocted, because I have very little trust or faith in people. What I had to do in order to maintain my sanity, I think, was just to go on a quest for, God and what I believe. I've had to reevaluate my core values, because, not that children consciously know what they value, but when you have the rug pulled out from under you, and you think you're this person, but then come to find out you're actually that person. It's like you have to reevaluate your own truth. You have to figure out whether you really like what you thought you liked. You have to determine whether what you thought was important is actually important to you. Is it important to you, or was it important to your family? Or in my case, was it important to me, or was it important to my grandmother? Or was it important to my grandfather? Or was it something that my aunts liked that I just identified with? And I spent a long time trying to figure out who I am. And that's not to say that the search is over. I just now have a better basis for making those choices. And I get to say, I get to say what's true for me. I get to say what I believe in. And for me right now, it's just about moving forward.
I appreciate you sharing your story. And it's not uncommon, like I said earlier, because it does happen for whatever reason
Yeah.
that the adults feel is the best thing to do. They just haven't taken into consideration the impact that it has on the child.
Sure.
So these childhood lies get to affect a person well into their years. So in closing, Marlo, what would be your message to the worldwide audience in relationship to your history?
Well, as I said earlier, if you are a parent who has misled your child about who their parents are, I encourage you to go clean up that story and just be real about it. Just tell the truth. Look at it as a healing opportunity for yourself and the child, because in many cases the children aren't considered. The children's well-being isn't considered when those types of decisions are made. And if you happen to be the child, a child who was misled, my heart just goes out to you. And I encourage you to do whatever research that needs to be done to figure out who you are. If you don't know where to start, if nobody in your family is talking, if they're being tight-lipped, then there's still ways of figuring it out, because somebody knows. Somebody knows. And sometimes it may involve public records. Sometimes it may involve going back to the neighborhood where you were raised and asking neighbors, because not everybody leaves the neighborhood. So somebody in the neighborhood may know, have some information on your family. If for some reason you feel like you need some support, some emotional support, some mental support, I say go get that. For some reason there's this belief in the black community that black folk don't need therapy, but I think many of us do. So if it's therapy you need, I encourage you to go get that. If you need to reevaluate your religious background or your spiritual upbringing, if you need to make some changes there and actually find a path that resonates more with you and what you believe, I recommend that you go do that. Anything that's going to help you feel better about who you are and to move forward in a positive and healthy and enlightened way, then that would be my advice.
Thank you, daughter.
Yeah. Thank you, Mama.